All right, let's dive right into this, shall we? Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a piece of really complex and honestly highly controversial source material, and we're going to break it down visually. We really want to understand the nuts and bolts of the arguments being made here. So we're looking at a wildly popular ideology presented by the YouTube channel MindRise Academy. Now, you might be asking, why does this matter? Well, because videos exactly like this one are racking up literally millions of views, and they're actively shaping how a massive chunk of a whole generation views relationships. Now, I want to be super clear right out of the gates. We are here to neutrally unpack and explain exactly what this source is arguing. We're not endorsing these views. We aren't debating them either. We are simply mapping out their psychological framework. According to the channel, the most dangerous thing in the world isn't, poison or a weapon. It's actually a person whose true face you never see behind their smile. And they apply this specifically to women. Let's see exactly how they built this case.
Take a look at this quote. Every individual has a face they show the world and another they hide even from themselves. This is a super famous concept from the pioneering psychiatrist Carl Jung, and it perfectly captures the foundation of their whole argument. What's absolutely fascinating here is how the source material uses these classic Jungian psychological concepts as the anchor for its core premise. MindRise Academy essentially takes Jung's theories about the human subconscious and applies them specifically, and I gotta say very rigidly, to female behavior. They claim that women are absolute masters of this hidden art. So, to unpack all of this, we've logically grouped their 7 distinct secrets into 5 key thematic areas. First up, the hidden face premise, then validation and testing, next ambition and influence, followed by conflict and shadows, and finally, the ultimate takeaway. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the hidden face premise, setting the psychological stage. So, this foundational claim relies entirely on the concept of the persona. Now, in Jungian psychology, the persona is basically the social mask or public face that a person uses to navigate society. The source channel takes this widely accepted psychological concept and applies it directly to their own framework. MindRise argues that women are literally masters of this mask. The argument they make is that the sweet, innocent exterior you might see, it's actually an active calculation. It's a mask worn specifically to hide deeper inner motives. Moving on to section 2, validation and testing. This covers secrets 1 and 2. Basically, now that the mask is on, how exactly is it used? Well, that brings us to their first secret, which they call the currency of attention. They argue that women essentially survive on attention, that it's this vital currency needed to feed the ego. According to this framework, when a woman smiles at a man, she isn't necessarily showing affection. Instead, she's basically gathering an audience. The crucial point the channel makes here is that to her, a man is often just a spectator. If a man gives continuous, unquestioning attention, the channel asserts it's going to completely exhaust him. And the pretty bleak conclusion they draw from this, once his energy is entirely depleted, she'll simply move on without a single shred of regret. To explain the mechanics of how this works, the source brings in another fascinating Jungian concept. The anima. Jung defined this as the inner feminine personality. The source explicitly attributes to Jung the idea that women use this deep inner intuition to constantly, almost subconsciously, test a man's true spirit. They argue it is not enough for a man to just say he's strong. He has to continuously prove it. And that brings us directly to secret 2, which is an endless loop they call the emotional test cycle. Let's walk through the steps. Step 1, ignore or provoke. The source claims she'll use sudden silence or mock a man's self-respect for no apparent reason at all. Step 2 is observation. She watches closely. Will he break down in anger? Will he get emotional? And then step 3 is the judgment. The channel argues that if the man remains perfectly stoic, he passes the test and earns temporary respect. But if he reacts emotionally, boom, he proves his weakness and is dismissed. The source insists this cycle is literally in their veins, constantly happening at every possible opportunity. Okay, section 3, ambition and influence. This covers secrets 3 and 4. Here, the framework actually shifts from those emotional games to a much broader social strategy. Secret 3 outlines what they call the constant upward search. The channel posits that, driven by a biological need for ultimate security, a woman's gaze is basically always directed upwards. She's constantly scanning the horizon. Their stark conclusion here is that a man might feel she is entirely his, but the reality? She only belongs to whoever provides the absolute best security and highest status in that specific moment. If someone better arrives, they claim, her focus effortlessly shifts. So how exactly is this influence exerted? Secret 4 details the game of manipulation. Take a look at this comparison. They draw a really sharp contrast between male and female conflict styles. Notice how they code direct action, things like open confrontation, direct commands, and physical weapons as male. On the flip side, they code indirect influence, like planting seeds in the mind, guilt-tripping, and emotional games as female. Relying on Jung once again, the channel asserts that a woman's true power lies exactly in this indirect influence. It's all about winning the war without ever holding a visible weapon, making a man think he's making his own choices. Moving on to Section 4, Conflicts and Shadows. This covers secrets 5, 6, and 7. And honestly, this is where the source material delves into its darkest psychological claims. Secret 5 tackles dual desires. The video argues that a woman's mind is essentially split between two completely incompatible archetypes. On one side, you have fire and danger. This is the man who triggers madness, passion, a racing heart, and this crazy magnetic attraction, but he lacks stability. On the other side, you have shadow and security. This is the dependable wall who provides a stable life and safety, but who ultimately leaves her feeling an internal emptiness. The source claims that because it's nearly impossible to find both of these traits in one single man, her heart is just always divided. And they say it's the men caught in this middle ground whose hearts end up broken. But what happens when a relationship ends? Well, that brings us to Secret 6. The source claims that today, largely because of social media, a woman has literally hundreds of alternative options constantly watching her. They argue that her unconscious mind is naturally wired to adapt incredibly quickly to this. The channel states that for her, replacing a man is as easy as changing clothes. She effortlessly moves forward, leaving the man completely shattered in the past. Now, to fully understand their seventh and final secret, we first need to define the shadow. In Jungian terms, the shadow is the unconscious, repressed, and usually darker aspect of the human personality. The channel applies this exact concept to form Secret 7, the true face. They claim that right beneath that innocent persona exists a hidden, deeply selfish nature, the shadow. They argue this shadow can be greedy, it can be cruel. According to the video, women repress this shadow simply to maintain society's approval. But here's the core of their warning. This shadow will absolutely be revealed the very moment it becomes beneficial or profitable for her to do so. This hidden darkness, they argue, is the true reality of female psychology. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the ultimate takeaway, preserving self-respect. So, looking at all of this, what is the YouTube channel actually trying to get its male audience to do? Well, the overarching goal here is self-preservation. They argue that recognizing these dark truths is literally the only way a man can prevent himself from being manipulated, used, or broken. The ultimate purpose of the source material is teaching men self-preservation through what they consider to be a stark, unblinking awareness of reality. The video does conclude with a few explicit disclaimers. They insist that this message is absolutely not about hating women. Rather, they say it's about understanding psychology so you can build impenetrable boundaries. They argue that a man's mental strength and self-control are his most valuable assets in the world. By learning to see people in their true forms, shadows and all, the channel promises that a man can prevent himself from ever being shattered. And that wraps up our explainer. We've mapped out MindRise Academy's whole framework, from the persona all the way to the shadow, and there's 7 secrets in between. But before we go, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question to think about. Does adopting this kind of rigid psychological framework actually build true self-respect, or is it really just a new kind of defense mechanism? I highly encourage you to critically analyze worldviews like this. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you next time.